Okay.
Nice. So let's start then. So the most important thing is if you want to do any questions, you can stop me whenever you want. The thing is, we're engaging in order to talk about Azure SQL MI, but also Fabric. I'm going to talk about also Databricks. But please feel free to stop me whenever you want. I am Gonzalo Bissio. I am based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, on the South Cone. As we spoke before, we won the American Cup recently. I am a huge fan of soccer or football. Now I am working in Accent Consulting. It's a company within LATAM. We have customers around LATAM. I am basically leading the data and AI team. I used to be a Microsoft employee. That is why I have this beautiful t-shirt, among other companies. So the idea of today is to talk about what are my options if I am using Azure SQL MI as a source database. The thing is, today, the data become the most important thing for companies. There are a bunch of companies working on different data strategies of being data centric. Maybe you hear about lakehouse architecture, maybe you hear about data mesh, among other things. So basically the thing is, hey, we have data within Azure SQL MI, we want to use it, period. What are my options? So let's start with the introduction about the different flavors in Azure for SQL Server. I am a huge SQL Server lover. So in case that you want to go to Azure, you have three options today. You have the virtual machines, the same as you have in on-premises. If you have physical or virtual, I know a bunch of customers using physical servers yet. So if you want to migrate and you want to move your different workloads to VMs, well, you can use this option within Azure. It is exactly the same as you have in on-premises, but with the difference that, well, be careful with cross-site. No, just it was a joke, sorry. Then you have Azure SQL MI and Azure SQL Database as different options. What are the difference between them? Which options should I choose? As I mentioned, if you have, for example, different features like file stream or file tables, or maybe you need to install some driver for your application because you need to use it, well, the best option should be the VMs. The same for the size of the instance. Let's say that you are using a SQL Server today with 14 terabytes of data, so be careful with that, because if you hit the limit of a space, that's it, you are done. You will not be able to scale your system up, you will have downtime, so be careful with that. Besides the 10 DB space, because these are the important things to consider before moving to a platform as a service, let's say. But let's say that you want to control the machine, well, you can use a virtual machine. On the other hand, we have Azure SQL Managed Instance. I will do a quick introduction in a few, so I will skip this. But now let's talk about Azure SQL Database. This was one of the first services in Azure like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, more or less. That was released back in February 2011 when Azure was released. In case that you are building a new cloud native solution and you want to use a database and you are not using jobs or you are not using cross database query and you don't want to have extra, let's say, work because you need to enable a couple of things in order to achieve that, you can use Azure SQL Database, or for example, you want to use something called sharding, or maybe you are using container or a container architecture and you want to have different databases with different compute, let's say, and in case that something happened, you have other database in order to make this, between quotes, microservice architecture. You can use Azure SQL Database. You have something called, well, for example, you can auto-scale Azure SQL Database. You can choose the minimum and the maximum number of CPUs, and the service will auto-scale, and this will be charged per second. It's a good thing that. But then, if you want to have almost 100% compatibility with on-premises or VMs, let's say, you can use Azure SQL MI. As I mentioned, there are some limitations like file tables or file stream, or if you're using service broker, there are some limitations. Obvious, please check. There is a compatibility matrix in where you can check these limitations at least. But I mean, it's my favorite service because I used to use a lot on premises or virtual VMs in the different yes, in the different cloud offerings, let's say AWS or Azure. I found that we have a lot of benefits. For example, we have to work a lot within weekends, at least once a month. I used to work in big companies in where we have more than 30,000 SQL servers in VMs, in on premises and in cloud. And just, I mean, you have been there, you know that we need to restart the VMs at least once a month because we need to apply patches, cumulative updates, or always patching. And I have to work many weekends because of that. And at least I save a lot of time there, as well as migrations, because, well, I will show you there was an improvement, I would say, or change, I would say, back in Microsoft Build event, in where you can check different policies, but I will explain that in a few. But at least it's one way. You migrate and you don't need to care about, hey, there is SQL 2025, 2026, or maybe I am hitting the end of support of SQL 2014, let's say. Here, at least, you ensure that you will not be, I mean, you will not have to migrate again. But it's a different benefit that I found. So having said all of that, let's start talking about the introduction of Azure SQL MI. The thing is why I am mentioning service tier, because I will show you, I will show you a couple of demos. One of the demos is that I will use business critical. Yes, it's more expensive than general purpose, but at least you have the ability to offload your reads to a secondary instance with the same amount of CPU and memory. Obviously, it's an availability group. If you are familiar with this feature, if you run a bunch of queries in a secondary replica, first of all, Query Store will not be enabled. So if you're using Query Store and you want to see, hey, what is going on with my queries, you will not see the different reports. So be careful with that. But at least you have this option of, to move this workload to the secondary replica. In terms of internal architecture, I mentioned availability group. Obviously, you will get more performance on the storage side, even though there was an improvement on general purpose back in build when the next gen general purpose was released, meaning that at the very beginning, when you choose general purpose, the database files were placed in a remote blob storage, meaning that depending on the size of the database file, that means a fixed number of IOPS based on the database file. But now there was a new improvement here on the next gen for general purpose that allows you to choose the number of IOPS that your instance will use. It's an amazing thing because I remember having a bunch of performance issues because of that. I had to scale up from general purpose to business critical because of this limitation. And now, because of this announcement, at least, obviously, you will pay more IOPS, more disks, more costs. But at least if you compare your existing system with Azure SQL MI and you take the baseline or the performance baselines using performance monitor and say, hey, my system is using this number of IOPS, I want the same, you can choose that. If you're using general purpose, obviously, not business critical. Then we have connectivity and security. Why I am mentioning this? Because I am showing you in a few a demo on how to connect Azure SQL MI to Microsoft Fabric, and you will see that you can use partially private endpoints. But let's talk about the difference. So first of all, we have VNet, which is your former NICs in on-premises. Every time that you build an Azure SQL MI, by default is tied to a VNet, meaning that if you want to connect to Azure SQL MI, you will have to open the connection. If you're using the same VNet, there will not be any problem because it's like you are on the same LAN between quotes. But if you are using a different VNet, you will have to configure what it's called peering, meaning that from this VNet, I will be able to see this other VNet. For example, in Azure SQL Database, by default, there is no VNet. It's open to internet directly. Obviously, you need to, whitelist your IP to connect, among other things. But the good thing for Azure SQL MI is that by default, you have your VNet. But be careful if you want to connect to an Azure SQL MI. Then we have the public endpoint. I will show you how to configure the public endpoint, meaning that you will not use the VNet. Instead, you will use this public endpoint in where anyone will be able to connect, because it's a new endpoint. Obviously, you will have to have your using within Azure SQL MI to connect, and the host name between quotes, or the endpoint to connect to it. And then we have the private endpoint, which means that we will open the connection between a VNet and the other one using private endpoints. Latest updates, as I mentioned before, I love to talk about the latest updates because at least you are seeing what are the things that are happening within your servers. Last year in November, on the last Microsoft Ignite, there were a lot of improvements. I remember that when I built my first Azure SQL MI back in 2018, because that year was released, I joined a private preview in one of the companies that I worked. And I remember that I clicked create, and it took like 40 hours to complete. And I was like, oh man, when this will finish? And I was testing that. That was in private preview. After some improvements, let's say, after a couple of years, I remember that creation or upgrade process took between 3 to 6 hours, more or less. Because basically you have an Azure SQL MI, let's say that you want to scale up because you need to add more cores or more memory. Okay. What is happening behind bars is that you have your actual architecture or structure or infrastructure, and then you have the new one. What is happening behind bars is that a syncing process is happening. So basically you are syncing your actual with the new one. When the process almost finished, automatically the connection will be cut for your application. There will be a quick failover. The last part of the synchronization will happen. There will be a failover, and then you will be able to continue. That is what happened behind bars. But the thing is that process, depending if you were using general purpose of business critical, it took like 3 to 4 hours. So you were waiting like 3 to 4 hours. So the process finished, and then you can continue, or you can improve the performance for your system, among other things. Back in November 2023, there was one of the improvements, which was faster provisioning between quotes. So now that process of 3 to 6 hours took only 30 minutes. I saw it. You need to make sure that your VNet is ready for that. You will see, I can show you in the portal, which says, yes, your VNet is ready for November, blah, 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 blah. Another thing, starting and stopping the instance. One of the things in cloud is that everything has a cost. Depending what you are using, that can be higher or lower. And one of the things every time that I try to find different solutions for my applications or my problems or my requirements is the cost. And the thing for Azure SQL MI is that, yes, it's amazing, but for example, I want to use Azure SQL MI, one instance for dev, one instance for QA, and another instance for prod. And the thing is, hey, I am not going to use dev or QA all the time. So I want to use this from 9 to 6 p.m., let's say. So that was not available until November, but only for general purpose, not business critical. So if you are using business critical, my recommendation will be, automating the process of downgrading from business critical to general purpose and then stop it. That would be my recommendation. Or to use general purpose, at least in dev, but in QA, you will have to have the same, because if you are testing performance, you want to see the impact and at least have the same one for at least one environment. But at least it's available in general purpose, among other, improvements. But those were my favorite. Now let's talk about migrations. Let's talk about DR solution. An amazing improvement or feature was the Azure SQL MI link, meaning that you were able to connect your on-premises or your cloud VM SQL Server to Azure SQL MI. And you could, let's say, replicate in a real-time manner your database, or near real-time, sorry. But the thing was, or the improvement was, that if you were using SQL Server 2022, now you can fail over, but also fail back, as long as you don't enable something that I will show you in another slide. But as of now, by default, you can connect your SQL 2022 to Azure SQL MI, you can fail over, and you can fail back. Let's say that you fail over, you test Azure SQL MI, but you want to roll back because of, I don't know, some problem, and you want to do the rollback. Now you can fail back directly using the distribute availability group, and in a couple of seconds, if everything is fine, everything works fine, you will be able to fail back. What will happen if you're using SQL 2019, 2017, 2016? Well, you can enable this feature. You will be able to fail over, but not fail back. So if you're thinking of migrating your existing SQL, and there, could be a chance that you need to roll back just to make sure that you're using SQL 22. Other thing that you can do, well, you can backup and restore the Azure SQL MI directly into SQL Server 2022, but not obviously SQL 2019, 2017, etc., etc. Something that is in private preview is the ability to call REST APIs sources. Let's say that you're using Azure OpenAI for your LLMs, and you want to, or you want to call some Azure OpenAI calls, among others, obviously, functions, web services, or if you are using any application that is, publishing some APIs and you want to get data because you need to save it into your database, well, it's in private to you. It's in private preview. The QR code is there in case that you want to join this private preview. You need to fill up a document, and that's it. And the PJ team will reach out to you in case that you can join this private preview. This one is in GA in Azure SQL Database. Database Watcher, it's a new monitoring service for your Azure SQL Database, for your Azure SQL MI, and your VMs. This one is replacing, I don't know if you used before Azure Monitor SQL Insights, which never was in GA. It's, between quotes, something similar. There are some differences, but behind bars, log analytics will be used in order to get the metrics and get the information from the different databases. And then there will be some dashboards that you will be able to see if you want to monitor your different services. I used to use, well, I tested the SQL Insight for one particular customer. Honestly, it was challenged because I have to put each server manually. So if I have VMs, Azure SQL Database or MI, I have to put manually each of the names. And honestly, it took a bunch for, big architectures. But I mean, this one is new, you can test it. Then, well, news at build. One of the things that I mentioned all the time was that we have SQL 2022 and Azure SQL MI. Something new released back in build was this update policy. I will show you in a few, so you can see it within the portal, that you have two different flavors for Azure SQL MI. You can use the default one, which is compatibility with SQL 2022, meaning that you will get the latest cumulative updates and security fixes for SQL 2022, But let's say that there are something new, let's say, for example, REST APIs, and you want to use it, and you want to have the latest version of Azure SQL MI. What is the thing? You will be able to use any new feature, which is not released yet on the, between quotes, on-premises version, but you will be using the latest features. What is the thing with this? Azure SQL MI link, obviously, it will not work because you will have a newer version than the one that is in on-premises. And the backup restore will not work as well because you will have a different build in Azure SQL MI. So be careful with this. Can you enable this? Yes, but it's one way. When you enable this, you run the update process between quotes, you will not be able to roll back this, and you will not be able to the features that I mentioned before. But you will be able to use the new features, at least the ones that are being tested in Azure SQL MI. The other one is the NetGen, the one that I mentioned before about the IOPS. In general purpose, you have the links. I will send you this slide so you can test it on your own afterwards. But let's go to our topic. After all of this introduction, let's talk about data in Azure SQL MI. What can we do? So, as I mentioned before, in Business Critical, you can, let's say, offload your reads to a secondary replica, one, in case that you're using the database as a reporting database as well, and you don't want to move data, you don't want to move, the differentials between quotes, or the changes happening within your instance. You can copy the database. Hey, you have your database in Azure SQL MI, you want to copy between quotes, it will be like backup and restore to another Azure SQL MI, and then you can run your queries. Let's say that you execute this process one time a day, let's say starting your day or at night, and then you use the other Azure SQL MI. If you're using Azure, in on-premises, you can use MI link to synchronize the database. Or then you can use different services like Microsoft Fabric. Why I am putting a Microsoft Fabric slide? This is because Microsoft is going there. Yes, you can say, but wait, Gonzalo, before we use integration services, then we use Synapse, and now Fabric. Okay, yes, the thing is, as of now, Fabric is an idea of everything on the same place. Powered by Power BI, there are like 500 million users. I went to the FabCon in March to Vegas. I heard the full story of Microsoft Fabric, all the things that they want to do. I think that it's a great idea because, first of all, you can, for example, query different sources from other cloud providers, and you can just read the data, and that's it. This is what it's called a shortcut. You will be able to read data without moving it. It's like using a link server. Between quotes, we are SQL people, so we know what a link server is. Even though that, hey, but I am using the query, I am between quotes copying this to the memory, and then SQL Server will use it. But no, we are using open role set, etc., etc., etc. But the idea is the same. The idea is to read data without copying it. There are different experiences within Fabric. We have data integration, which is data engineering. We have data warehouse, we have data science, we have Power BI, data analyst, in case that you want to see this as different roles. Again, everything will be together. In build, there was an announcement of real-time analytics, some new experiences with that. But the idea is to have everything, this new unified analytic solution. Because, for example, let's say that you are building a new data architecture and you have different services and you need to connect them. You need to talk to your security team, say, hey, yes, this server will connect, this service will connect to this service. We are going to authenticate using Microsoft Entra. Oh, wait, but we need to standardize this service. This will take a bunch of weeks. Please open the ticket, blah, blah, blah. The good thing for Fabric is that you will have everything together. So you don't need to talk to anybody. Everything will live on the same side. And honestly, I am seeing different options or opinions for Fabric. Also, the governance part, you will be able to create different catalogs and see how each service, is being connected among other things. It's a good service. I am testing a lot with a couple of customers. Here, I love architecture diagrams. I love to, explain based on the requirement, how are we going, or what are the services that we're going to use. This one is a medallion architecture. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept of having different layers of information. For example, you use the bronze, the silver, and gold, depending, of how you transform your data, because obviously the bronze layer will be your raw data. Then you apply some, for example, you start creating different tables on the silver layer with creating an schema on the silver layer. Start applying some transformation, and then on the gold part, remove the duplicate, for example, and then present the data. It's your serve layer, the gold layer. And then you can use different reports pointing to the goal. But for example, if you have data scientists on your team and you are building models, sometimes data science needs the raw data. So, all of the different roles can, work on the same side, on the same architecture. But having said all of that, we will have Azure SQL MI here on the databases part. With Fabric, as I mentioned, you can use these shortcuts or this way to read data without copying it. Or you can use pipelines. I don't know if you're familiar with Azure Data Factory or Synapse pipelines. It is exactly the same. I will show you in a few that we are going to use the same canvas, the one that we are using Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse. The different layers, all the things that you can use. Here Microsoft is following the same idea as Databricks with the notebooks, with the different languages that you can use on the notebooks. And or you have the option to use data flows. If you like to move different boxes to drag and drop from one side to another, and you want to use data flows, you can use the pipeline, and that's it. Then you have the gold layer where you will be able to query the different tables also here. But everything will be on the same side. We are not moving anything outside this solution. And on top of this, there is something called right now One Lake. So everything is built off on top of One Lake. By default, there will be some data tables created, etc., etc., etc. This is not a Fabric session, but at least I wanted to introduce you Fabric because I will show you this on the demos. So now let's go to the demo time. 1 second, because I am using my standing desk and I want to sit because I will show you a couple of things. In the meantime, do you have any questions?
Questions? Like he talked about the REST endpoints, right, with the SQL Azure managed instance.
Yeah.
So those are the function is directly available to the PowerShell's module as a modular through the PowerShell. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. The idea is to do the exact same thing that is available today in Azure SQL Database, called REST endpoints, directly within Azure SQL MI, which is not available yet. But the idea mainly is just to do REST endpoint calls directly from the engine to the different targets.
Thank you.
Sure. So
is that just to enable SQL-based users to do that?
Yeah, Azure SQL Database is in GA today. I can share you the blog with how to do that. So let's start. My first demo will be testing, between quotes, the to offload your reads from the primary to the secondary. Wait, let me show you first, because as much as I can, I want to show you stuff. So let's go to Azure SQL MI. If I click create, I don't know if you are familiar with this, but let's do very quick, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this. Well, this one is how to authenticate. We have the network, as I mentioned, the VNet here, the one where Azure SQL MI will be deployed. We have the security, the Microsoft Defender, which is not free, so be careful with that. Different identities, TDE, which is enabled by default. You can bring your own key here, meaning that, obviously, if you want to restore it, you will have to upload your key, so be careful with that. Collation, in case that you want to use a different one, but here is what I wanted to show you. This one is new. So basically we have the option of always up to date, meaning that you will be using, the new features, and then you have the default, which is SQL 2022. So basically you will be using, SQL Server 2022 latest cumulative updates, but if there is something new, you will not be able to see it or to test it. Can you change this on the fly? As I mentioned, the answer is yes, but it's one way, so be careful with that. Then tags, for example, I use tags for to know the environment, to know who is the owner, name, or here, owner email, I don't know, application name, etc., etc. I don't know if you're familiar with tags, but I use them for this. Why? Because on each company, obviously, we have different reports that shows, for example, what are the Azure SQL MI exists on the environment, and I want to use PowerShell in order to get them. I want to know the owners. I want to know the application. When you have thousands and thousands of Azure SQL MI or SQL servers, you want to know who owns who, because I want to, somebody to pay. So I use the tags for that, obviously. Yes, I remember my director saying, hey, who is paying this? I don't know. Oh, I will kill you. Yes, I know. So this one is my Azure SQL MI. As I mentioned before, I am using Business Critical, as you can see here. I forgot to show you the next gen for the general purpose. So now, as you can see, if I choose general purpose, I have next gen. I click enable, and then you will see now that I have the different hardware generation. This one is that you are using different Intel processors, as you can see, different family. But for the premium series, the most important thing is the amount of memory per vCore. So depending, obviously, on what you need or what you're using today, is that you can use more memory per vCore. Obviously, you will have to pay more. And then here you have right now IOPS. So now you will be able to choose a fixed number of IOPS for your system. This one is new. It's in preview, yes, but you don't need to fill up any document because it's in public preview. Again, I don't know if you're familiar with, preview features. My recommendation is not to use them in production unless you talk to Microsoft, you talk to the product team and say, hey, are you going to support me? Yes or no? Because, I saw terrible things happening in production using preview features, so be careful with that. Okay, having said all of that, let's go to the demo. Basically, I'm going to run a query, but let me show you first. This one is my primary. As you can see, the agent here is up. And then, for example, if I open the database settings and I open Query Store, query store is enabled by default. You don't need to enable anything. Every time that you restore a database, query store will be enabled. So let's do one thing. So now, I don't know what I was running. So now I'm going to connect again. So I don't know if you're familiar with Azure SQL MI, the link that you will have, or the host name, is this little guy here. But what we are going to use is two different attributes on the connection string. If you're familiar with availability group and you use the feature to reroute a connection from the primary to the secondary, you are familiar with this, which is mentioned that the connection will be read-only and the database will be my user database. In this case, AdventureWorks DW 2022. And that's it. Automatically, you will be connected to the secondary. As you can see here, who knows why the agent is disabled on the secondary. And then you will see, for example, now that query store is read-only. There is an item opened for this in order to enable query store in a secondary replica, but as of now, it's not enabled. So then I can run the query. The thing here is that, but well, if I am going to run a query on my secondary instance, how can I monitor it? Well, one of the things that you can use is, queries. What kind of queries? Well, you can use the exec request here in order to see, hey, what is going on right now? I want to see what are the things that are running. And there I want to know which one is consuming CPU here. As you can see, CPU, session ID, etc., etc., etc. Other things that you can use if you want to, monitor the amount of resources that your instance is using, you can use this view, the db_resource_stats, in order to see the amount of resources that are being used. You can build your own report here, and you can see some information. Obviously, but Gonzalo, I am using SP who is active. Well, the thing is, you cannot create anything here because it's a read-only operation. You can, create the surplus here on the database and then try to run it. But as of now, you can use these queries in order to monitor what is going on with your instance. Maybe in the future, query store is enabled, and that's it. But as of now, we can use these queries in order to monitor what is going on the secondary replica. Again, be careful with the number of queries running here because the synchronization can be impacted as it happens in regular, availability groups. You can, impact the synchronization between the replicas. So be careful with that. But at least you don't need to pay anything extra, and you can move some of your workload to the secondary replica. You will not see this instance within the portal. It's not like, hey, I am clicking the secondary and that's it. Now, let's see how can we, in a pooling, let's say, operation, we are extracting data from Azure SQL MI using Fabric. So in order to connect to Fabric, it's very simple. You need to just click fabric.microsoft.com, and that's it. And you will be connected directly to your Fabric environment. Then here, you have different experiences. As I mentioned before, you have data engineer, data science, data warehouse, and some other solutions like real-time Power BI, Data Factory, obviously, which is part of the data engineering experience or data warehouse. And then here you can choose. In my case, it will be data engineer. I don't know if you are familiar with Airflow, but well, Well, let me show you my workspace. The workspace is the same thing that you have in Power BI. I don't know if you're using Power BI, but you will see the exact same thing here. So this one is my workspace view. For example, if you want to build something automatically, here you can use this one, which is task flow. This one is an improvement, which is powered by Airflow. And you can create a flow. Let's say that, I don't know if I have a task flow. I don't think that I have, but anyway, I want to show you. Let's say that you are building a medallion architecture based on your architecture, and you want that a template will be created to a medallion architecture. You click select. Well, let's do one thing because I already created my get data. Let me create a different workspace so I can show you this. Source, apply. I am creating a new workspace so I can show you here. I have a workspace and I will create a task flow as I did before. And I will create a medallion architecture. I will click select and automatically, boom, we have the entire flow. Obviously, we will have to create on each of the tasks the different services or the solution that I'm going to use. But this one helps you to, create an architecture based on a template. But now I will be more, I will do something more simple, which is my get data pipeline. Let me show you. I click add and I will create get data task in order to get my information. What I'm doing here basically is just to create a pipeline in order to get data from Azure SQL MI. So let me just use the copy assistant. At least I am able to show you what I did. Come on, be nice with us. So let's start with Azure SQL MI. If you are going to use Fabric, the thing is, by default, at least if you want to pull data using the copy command or the copy assistant, you will have to use the public endpoint. But the thing is, but Gonzalo, you told me that I will be able to use private endpoints. The answer is yes, but I will show you something in a few. As of now, as you can see here, which is public, you will have to use here the public endpoint. So the question is, okay, how can I enable this? Honestly, it's very easy. Let's say you click networking within your Azure SQL MI, and here you click enable on this part. You click save, and that's it. In order to make this work, as I mentioned that if you're using Azure SQL MI and you will see a VNet, you will have to open the connection to this new port, because by default, the public endpoint will use a different port than the one that we normally use with, which is 1433. So by default, you need to, here, one, enable public endpoint, and number two, you will have to enable this rule. I will show you in a few how to do that. And if you're going to connect, you will have to use this endpoint instead. Otherwise, the copy will not work. So in order to finish this process and to add this particular rule to the network security group, I'm going to click overview. I am going to open my VNet. Then I will click settings. I will click subnets. And here you will see manage instance, which is the VNet that I am using for managed instance. And here you will see on this particular column, security group. Here is where you manage the connection to your VNet. As you can see here, you will see 3342. Here I open the connection from, obviously, if you have a particular source, you know the IP, or you know from where you're going to connect, you can just here filter by the source of the connection. In my case, obviously, it's a demo environment, so I don't care the source or the target. This one is testing, and that's it. So what's next? Here, I think, yes. So basically here, I will use, as I mentioned before, Triad SQL user group, and here networking. Come on. And here I click on the endpoint, copy. All right. And here I am using AdventureWorks BW 2022. Here I use my organization account, the one that I'm using right now. Yes, I know. I don't know, 3. Adventure, yes, I know that it's been used. No worries, let me use. I know that this one is not correct, but because I already created this connection. Be nice. Let me see. Gonzalo test is connecting to the data source. Adventure, yes. Never. Now I am going to select a particular table from here. 1 second. Loading. Come on. Be nice with us. And then I will choose the destination. I'm going to move this to my lakehouse. I don't know. Let's use team date video, a small one. In the meantime, then open so I can show you my lakehouse. I have not the following. Let me see. Because maybe we can create a new one. I don't want to create a new one, but anyway. Okay, team date, data destination, one lake that I have. And I want to use, yes, this one, lakehouse. It's in a table. You can map in case that the table already exists. You can just do the mapping from your existing table to the target side, or you can enable partition. Let's say that you have a column that you're using a date or you're using an ID and you want to partition it. You can enable this partition. You can click next. You can start a data transfer immediately, save and run, and boom, that's it. It's the same pipeline that you have in Azure Data Factory or Synapse if you are using Synapse. It's the same. You have the same canvas. This one will start, and let me show you what you're going to see, because it will take a couple of seconds to run both, because I have 2. In my case, will be data engineering, and then I will see workspaces, and I will choose this little guy. Okay, one finished, and I have the other one. And here, for example, I can see my lakehouse. And as you can see, the tables are here. 1, 2. So here you can use something called SQL endpoint here, that you can use queries, SQL queries, to run, against the different tables on the lakehouse. If you are using warehouse experience, you can use these tables as well. If you want to join them, that's it. So this one, in case that you want to pull data from Azure SQL MI using Fabric. But now I mentioned that private endpoints are supported. So how can I enable this, let's say? So first of all, the thing or the main thing is that Fabric supports private endpoint against, Azure SQL Managed Instance, but the limitation is that, today, the only thing that is supported is if you are using only, I will show you this here, notebooks. Oops, sorry. Notebooks. So if you are using the copy command, the one that I showed you before, you will not be able to use private endpoints. That is why we saw public that something. So if you are going to use notebooks, you will be able to use private link. That is why here I was able to configure the private endpoint. So let's see this. So first of all, you need to enable the private endpoint. I am going to do the exact same process, but for the triad SQL user too. So in order to enable this, you need to, or you can use the bash, you can use PowerShell, you will have to get the ID for your Azure SQL MI. So how can you get that? It's something simple. Well, I am using the bash and I am using PowerShell. You can use different stuff here, but in my case, I am not using the bash, I am using PowerShell. I will explain you why I need the ID. Authenticate them to Azure. Yes, we know that. Building. Okay.
Here it is.
List. Oops. SQL in my list. Basically, this command here will list all the Azure SQL MI within my subscription. I have a single one, but then, you can select a different subscription. You can move to a different subscription. But in my case, I have a single one. That is why I am not moving to a different one. What is the column that you need? This one, ID, subscription, blah, 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 blah. Basically, you'll have to copy everything here. Copy. And then here, within Fabric, you can create this one. Let's say Azure SQL MI 2. On the resource identifier, as you can see, the resource ID. And here you can see subscription, blah, 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 blah. I will paste what I got from the bash command. And here you will see that automatically managed instance will be used. I click request manage. I don't know. I want my data. Be nice. Great. And the process will start. I click refresh, the activation process will start. I will set provision. They will say, hey, I need your approval, and I will show you in a few. Let me see if we are seeing. Let me close this little guy. And here you will see private endpoint connections. And now you will see that this one is pending because we have the request, and we click here, we click approve, and then we say yes. And this will be approved. After that, you will see that everything is approved, everything is working, and now you will be able to connect from Fabric to Azure SQL MI using private endpoints. So then you will see this one, succeeded, approved. So now you will be able to use notebooks in order to, to connect to Azure SQL MI. Let me see. Well, I have the notebooks here, but I was using this for other purpose, I believe. Let me see. Because I can use, well, I will use the same one. But now I want a new notebook. Let's use a new one. And let's see if this works. Because let me see 1 second, because I don't know if we will have time to see everything, because this will take time. Basically, let me show you that I am using PySpark in order to connect to my SQL server. Then the port 1433, I am using the database name, I am using SQL authentication, and then I am building the data frame here. And what I am seeing right now is data, basically. Let me see, because this will take time. If I click run, because obviously the infrastructure will start, it will take a couple of seconds in order to start. In the meantime, I will continue to the other one, which is while this runs, because I want to show you Data Wrangler as well, but this will take a couple of seconds. Now, let me show you something called CTAS, which is a feature that will allow you to export data from Azure SQL MI directly into the Lakehouse, or you can export data to a storage account within Azure in a Parquet format, which is amazing, by the way. So let's see, let me just copy this little guy. And I will show you, I have 15 minutes. Now, let me just cancel this. I will remove this little guy because I want to connect to the primary right now. Come on. Let me see the portal. Oh, still running. Okay. Come on. Okay, don't worry. So basically, in order to use CTAS, first of all, you have to enable something called Polybase. I don't know if you are familiar with Polybase. It's a new feature introduced back in SQL 2016. If you want to use this on your on-premises or VMs, you will have to, install an additional service. But here is very easy to enable this. You need, again, to open the bash and use PowerShell in order to enable it. It's a very simple command that I will show you in a few. Come on. Basically, you are changing, oops, wrong display. You are changing some configuration here. You are not getting, you are setting. And then you have the option which is allow Polybase export, value equals 1. Basically, you are enabling this. The thing is, if you want to check whether if it was enabled or not before, you can use this query, the one I'm going to show you here, which is query the sys configurations GMB and see the status of the Polybase export. In my case, obviously, value in use is equals to 1 because I already enabled this. Then we are seeing the Fabric example first. Then you will create, let's see, here, this one will be better. First, we will be creating an external file format, meaning that we are going to export data using a Parquet file format. I am going to use a database scope credential managed identity. This means, because the thing is, hey, I am going to export this. Okay, but what will be the user that you are going to use? Because you need to authenticate into Fabric. In my case, I am using a managed identity, which is a Microsoft Entra identity for Azure SQL MI, saying that, hey, Fabric, Azure SQL MI with this name, with this identity, will connect into the Lakehouse in order to export data. So how can I do that? Okay. So we are going to go back. Well, this one is enabled, server configuration value equals to 1. Basically, here, what we are going to enable is, in my case, let me see if I already enabled this. Oh, I can't remember though. identity. So here we have manage identity, which is this real guy, which is on by default in my case. Then what I did was to add my manage identity user, between quotes, my manage identity or Entra identity into Fabric. So how I did that? Well, it's very simple. Yes, I started nice, we love you. But basically on my demo before, you are able to see that I am using private endpoint with the 1433 and I am able to see data. Well, there we have Data Wrangler, but I have only 12 minutes, so I will not, well, I will open it. Data Wrangler is something new in Fabric that allows you to modify information doing some drag and drop in case that you want, to remove duplicates, for example, here, very easy. Drop missing values, drop duplicate, find and replace, and you can play with the different columns and see the density of each column, among other things. Sorry that I'm going fast here, but I want to show you at least all of the demos. So as I mentioned before, we are connecting Azure SQL MI into Fabric directly using CTAS. Now on the authentication part, we click on the workspace and then we click Manage Access. And here you can put your Azure SQL MI name, trial SQL, and you will see here the service principal if you're using it or the managed identity. You click and you add here the different permissions. I mean, at least you need contributor, or you can use admin because, nobody's going to authenticate directly using the managed identity. After that, you have access to Fabric right now. So we have the permissions, we have the format. We know that we are going to export using Parquet. We know that we are going to authenticate using a managed identity. Right now, let's create what is called external data source, meaning that we know that we are going to export using Parquet, authenticating using managed identity, and now we need to say, hey, we are going to leave the data here. Where? In my case, in the lakehouse. So now let's go, in my case, to my lakehouse. I will click on the files part because I'm going to export a Parquet file. We click here, we click properties. And here we need to copy this path. But let me show you something very, very important. Otherwise, this will not work. So this one is the location that I just pasted. Important thing is that you need to change this here for ABS. ABS is only supported, not ABFSS. Otherwise, it will not work. And the other thing that you need to change is this little guy, blob. You need to change DFS and you need to put blob. Otherwise, it will not work. If you need, I will share a post by Joan Popovich from Microsoft explaining this, but be careful with this, otherwise the CTAS will not work. Then you create external data source in order to leave the data. And the final part is to create what is called external table, meaning that you will create a new Parquet file based on this query. Based on this query here. Create external table, the location within the lakehouse, the folder name will say Azure SQL MI option, Fact Finance, and the query with the information that I'm going to create. So I already created everything before. And that's it. So now I created a new Parquet file with the information from this particular table. So I have 1000 rows here, sorry for the size. I have 1,000 rows, as you can see here, and I created a new external table. But what are we seeing within the lakehouse? So now let's go to the lakehouse. Let's go to the files. I will click refresh. And now you can see the folder, the first folder that I created. And then we have the second one, Fact Finance, which is the table name. And here you will see a Parquet file. So you exported the table directly into the Fabric Lakehouse. What can you do next? Well, very simple. You can, for example, right-click, load to table, and create a new table based on that Parquet file. In my case, will be Parquet. I click load. And now I have the table based on the Parquet table that I exported from Azure SQL MI. Is this a change data capture mechanism? The answer is no. It's like a snapshot. Let's say that you need a photo of your table once a day, and you export this table directly into Fabric, so then you can query it, and that's it. Or you can create multiple Parquet files, among other things. But the most important thing is that if you insert data, update data, whatever you are adding into your source table, you are not going to see this on the external table. It's like a snapshot. One important thing, very important, is that by default, external table doesn't have statistics, meaning that, let me show you, and we have 5 minutes. I will click external tables. In my case, it's export, and you will see statistics here. And you will see that there are no statistics, meaning that if you see the number of rows, so let me see. Actually, yes. If you see the estimated number of rows, oops, I can't use my SumIT. If you see the estimated number of rows to be read, it's a crazy number, which is 30,000 number of rows. So my recommendation here will be create a statistic. So you have a better estimation based on the statistics now. As you can see now, the estimated is 1,000. And I have 5 minutes, so do you have any question? I have another demo for storage account, but we have 5 minutes. I have Databricks as well, but I know that it's late for you, so I don't know if you have any question or something.
Oh, good demo.
That's,
Yeah.
no, very good. Apologize for cutting your time on you a little bit there.
No.
We got a late start.
I will send you these slides to you, George, in case that well, I have here the Fact Finance right now. In case that you want to forward this to the people, in case that they want to check anything there, or if you have any questions, you have my contact in LinkedIn, or you can send this to George, and I will answer this as much as I can. That's it, folks. Thank you for the time. Amazing time. It was very nice to chat with you. Let's stay in touch.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And we will upload this recording online.
Awesome.
And anything you send